Hi, everyone. I'm very excited to see all of you here, and even more excited about all the great things we'll be achieving here at the conference, and in the days, weeks, months, and years to come from everything that's happening here. So thank you for coming. I think it's pretty clear that our industry has reached a certain critical mass, whereas before it was considered a niche industry that wasn't taken seriously. Now, after passing $2.5 trillion relatively recently, and now being at about $1 trillion in total value, it's something that many people agree is the way the world will work going forward. For me, this way of the world working was always about creating a world that was mathematically guaranteed. And what that means for me, and hopefully for us, is that it's a world driven by cryptographic systems, cryptographic guarantees, and mathematics. That is in stark contrast to the world that we live in today, where basically institutions can make promises that they don't have to keep. That is our fundamental problem with a lot of the way that society works, and it's been my fundamental problem with the way that a lot of society works for a long time. Regardless of if it's a news institution, a financial institution, or really any institution, we should live in a world where the commitments made to us are mathematically enforced. And this is the more reliable, fair, and transparent way for the world to work. This is what our industry has always been about for me, and this is what I think more and more people are realizing as the industry takes over larger and larger parts of society and the global economy. When you hear people talking about building a world by truth at this conference, this is what they mean. They mean a world powered by mathematical guarantees, cryptography, and encrypted systems that make sure that things happen. Things don't have to happen because somebody promised you. They have to happen because that is how the system works and forces them to happen. That is the new direction for the world that we are all building here together. The funny thing about all of this is that when you really think about it, this is already starting to take hold in various aspects of our daily lives. So if you look at things like messaging systems in terms of people communicating via text messages, and you think 10 or 15 years into the past, you'll see that 10 or 15 years ago, nobody really cared very much about the security or privacy of their messages. They would just send unencrypted messages about any number of topics, risky topics, bad topics, good topics, but nobody really knew what end-to-end encryption was for messages. Now, fast forward 10 or 15 years into the future, and all of us know what end-to-end encrypted messaging is, and the average consumer out on the street also knows what it is after over 6 billion encrypted messaging app downloads. The reason for that is that the systems that provided messaging capabilities basically lost the trust and lost the trust relationship with their users, mainly all of you. And they lost that trust relationship by misusing the information that you sent through their systems, by selling it to others, and by manipulating it for their own purposes. This is a trust relationship problem that we're all familiar with, and that we've all made a decision to solve by switching to systems that are cryptographically guaranteed. This is really what end-to-end encryption is for messaging. It's a cryptographically guaranteed version of messaging that doesn't rely on brands or institutions making you promises, but relies on mathematics enforcing the relationships that you want to have with the messaging system. This is the fundamental transition that I and many of the people in our industry believe will happen for the rest of the world. And the factors for this transition to occur are at all-time highs. So if you look at the amount of faith that people have in news systems, whether they're search engines, news sites, or social media, you'll see that that is an all-time low. So basically, the news, social media, and even search engines are becoming trusted less and less to provide reliable information. If you look at people's faith and the sentiment around all financial brands, even some of the biggest ones in the world, you'll see that that is also at an all-time low. This is the environment in which cryptographic guarantees become extremely useful and valuable, because cryptographic guarantees are how you get out of a world where you have to rely on people's word and a brand that says it will follow through, even though it doesn't have to follow through. So the same scenario that we saw in messaging, where a diminishing amount of trust in the brands and institutions that created messaging, being at an all-time low, leading to the adoption of cryptographic guarantees in the form of end-to-end encrypted messaging, is now playing out again for information and for the financial system. That is what this industry is about. That is what this conference is about. That is what all of our work here together really is about, is it's about giving people this cryptographically guaranteed alternative. So how do we provide that cryptographically guaranteed alternative? This is really what Web3 applications are all about, and this is what the property of trust minimization is about. If I were to boil down the uniqueness of Web3 applications to one thing, I would call them trust minimized. Basically, these are applications that you don't need to take their word for it. These applications are cryptographically guaranteed to follow through on their commitments, regardless of anybody else's decisions. Just in the way that you control a private key, and that private key controls a token, that is a trust minimized application. And that trust minimization is going to be extended to everything. So our body of work with Chainlink is to create the infrastructure and the services and systems that allow the world's developers to build the applications that bring this change in how the world works to all of us. I think there are some very useful lessons for us to learn from how the web has evolved in terms of predicting how our industry has evolved. And part of the reason for that is this is already how our industry is evolving. Generally speaking, when new technologies appear, they commonly become smaller and smaller parts that are then combined into more advanced systems. So if you look at the web, you'll see a stage where everything was monolithic. There were large single systems that didn't even communicate with other systems. They were closed systems, and this was really the beginning of the web. These systems didn't interact with each other. They had very specific purposes, and those very specific purposes were all they really did. Kind of similar to having choose a single chain with only a single set of things you can do. Then we moved on to a service-oriented architecture in the web where you actually pulled apart parts of those big monolithic systems, and you made them into little separate parts that could be combined into more advanced applications. This is where the web applications of the 2000s came from. It's from this innovation in how you build web applications and web systems. If you look at how web applications and web systems are built today, they're built through something called microservices. Microservices are basically hundreds of little small individual specific services that are stringed together to create the complex applications that you're used to, such as Amazon e-commerce, Netflix, Uber, and any number of things that basically touch your lives in a very meaningful way. This is the historic evolution that led to the web creating these highly advanced, highly useful, highly in-demand applications. And this is the same transition that the Web3 world is going through now. The only difference is it's happening twice as fast if you look at the rate at which this evolution is happening, which isn't surprising based on the speed of our industry. So the Web3 world also began in a monolithic state where you had a number of chains that I can count on my two hands. And you could only really use those chains and their systems. You couldn't really do anything else. You couldn't connect to other chains. You couldn't connect to other services. There were no oracles. And so you began with a very monolithic structure where whatever you built was whatever the chain would let you build. Now, with the help of Chainlink Oracle networks and our innovations in creating these external services, we've arrived at a world where there are multiple services that can be combined with on-chain state. This creates DeFi, right? So DeFi is an example of a service-oriented architecture application because it's composed of both on-chain state and multiple separate external services that are connected to that state. So this is where we are now, with CCIP being the next evolution of this, where you create a simple kind of messaging layer to allow more and more of those services to get consumed in a simpler and simpler way. We are now going to be transitioning to a microservices world where there are going to be thousands and tens of thousands of different specific services, either as a specific contract or as specific Oracle networks that can be combined into really advanced applications. And this is the world where you combine multiple contracts across multiple chains into one application, where you combine hundreds of different Oracle networks into one application. And that's when applications reach the level of usefulness, complexity, scalability, and privacy-preserving usability that we all have come to expect from Web 2. The world that this historic transition will lead us to is basically a world where more value is provided. And fundamentally, what all of this will do is it will allow Web3 applications to initially reach parity on every dimension with Web 2, but then go beyond Web 2, because if I were to offer you any Web 2 application at the same cost, speed, and usability, but I were to give it to you in a highly reliable way where it couldn't be manipulated and it couldn't change its behavior and take your money or do whatever the hell it wanted to do because some guy somewhere decided, why would you ever choose the less reliable Web 2 application? You would never choose it. You would always choose the more reliable one. I've been talking about this with people for over a decade. Well, not exactly a decade, a little less on this point, but the point is, for as long as I've been explaining this to people, I haven't really seen a single person that says, give me the risk. I would love the risk. It just doesn't happen. So we just need to get this entire industry to the point where we're at parity with Web 2, and then this whole place will have a feature that Web 2 could never have. And then it'll all just transition, because frankly, the world is not going in a more trusting direction. It's going in a less trusting direction. So this is the dynamic we're really kind of involved in here. The dynamic I just mentioned with service-oriented architecture is well underway. Here's an example of an application called Synthetics, which is a composition of multiple Chainlink services and on-chain state. In this case, it's Chainlink automation and Chainlink price feeds. Here's another example on a separate chain that is about lending. It uses Chainlink price feeds and the random number generation capabilities of the protocol. So it's using two services, and it has on-chain state on another chain. Here's a third application that is on yet another separate chain, which is using three services. It's getting random numbers, it's getting price data, and it's getting automation. So we are clearly in the stage of development where service-oriented architecture has taken hold, and the more services that appear, the more advanced these applications tend to become. That is really the body of work that we are involved in working on Chainlink. It's providing more and more services to allow those applications to become more advanced and to allow them to provide greater value to consumers, institutions, everybody. And that is what drives our industry forward and continues to reinvent it to new heights. We're very proud to have done this with over 1,000 Oracle networks already. So you can think of that as over 1,000 distinct services being launched that provided distinct value to applications. Generally speaking, this is in and of itself a large scalability achievement. Because if you look at other blockchain systems and decentralized infrastructure, they are trying to scale to 10 or 20 copies of themselves, right? They're trying to make 10 or 20 versions of their chain that they eventually will call app chains. You can call them side chains. In like 14, they were called child chains. This is like a repeating concept, but this repeating concept for chains has only been achieved at the level of 10, 20 chains being replicated for any one environment. We have been able to replicate over 1,000 Oracle networks. So that speaks to the scalability properties of Oracle networks and their ability to meet the demand for services for all of these more advanced applications. This scaling in the ability to provide Oracle networks has allowed us massive scaling in the amount of data. This amount of data is basically what gave rise to DeFi. If these 4 billion, big difference, 4 billion and over 200 million data points were not on chain, DeFi would not be anywhere close to where it is today in terms of the value it secures, the markets it involves, and the chains that it's on. So this initial scaling of Oracle networks as a Web3 services mechanism was initially applied to data, and that allowed data to scale as a resource, and the scaling of data as a resource allowed DeFi to scale as an application, right? This is the pattern that we want to repeat and scale. This is what we want to do. We want to scale this up for DeFi, well past 4 billion data points, well past 200 billion secured, well past all these big numbers that we've had, and put some more zeros on there. And then we want to repeat this same dynamic for all other industries. The gaming industry, the insurance industry, the advertising industry, the global trade industry. If you think of an industry and people don't trust each other in there, and there's a digital dynamic where people are using the internet, then you can assume that 90% of that industry can eventually be in one of these graphics. Initially, this has led to 1,500 projects in the Chainlink ecosystem. I would say this puts us towards the very top of ecosystems. And part of the reason for this is that Chainlink is currently working across about 15 chains. So Chainlink is one of the few systems that can work across chains and provide all of this value across different blockchain environments. So realistically, this number could grow far beyond any one blockchain environment, because this number will include all blockchain environments. Where we've been so far is data. That's what's driven all of this growth. It's a very good place to be because you can't build applications without data. Data tells applications what to do. Very important, right? You can't really make the Uber application without knowing where the driver is and where the rider is, as a simple example. You can't make financial applications without market data. We've since expanded what data is available through the Chainlink network to proof of reserve, soon now identity data and weather and a bunch of other types of data. This dynamic is well underway, and there is anywhere between 60 to 90% market share of all data-driven apps, dApps in the blockchain industry going through Chainlink. So this is the first initial place where Oracle network consensus has been applied. But it is by no means where it will end or where it'll even stay. We've since then expanded to off-chain computation. Off-chain computation is basically the ability to use an Oracle network as a small committee that does a very specific computation. So you can, instead of taking a blockchain and trying to rejigger the blockchain to do something that it wasn't meant to do, you can just make your own committee about your specific computation that you need, that needs to be trust minimized, but that blockchains can't do. Initially, we expanded this to be about random numbers because that was a highly demanded computation, and the random number generation capabilities of Chainlink are now the industry standard for gaming and many other use cases that rely on randomness. Since then, we've expanded to automation, which are really kind of simple computations, but that automation system is now developing into a more general compute state. And beyond that, there's all kinds of very specific but extremely important and valuable computations like fair sequencing that go to the core of how systems in our industry work. The next category of what the Chainlink network will do, and these will, I think, be the three main categories of what Chainlink as a Web3 services platform does, will be cross-chain. Cross-chain is basically the same computational problem as providing data. You want to take some data from over here, you want to come to reliable, ungameable, fraud-proof consensus somewhere in the middle, and then you want to get it over there in order for that data to do something, right? That sounds really familiar. That's what the cross-chain problem is, right? Except they want to do it for tokens, and they want to do it for messages. So considering that we have the most value-securing, best track record, no external security breaches throughout the life of the protocol since production, system for transmitting commands and information, things moving across chains, it's just information. It's not some new magical information. It's just information, but it's about tokens, and it's about some commands. And so I think the security we've been able to create for all these other things is extremely applicable to cross-chain. We are definitely taking our time on getting that right, because it is not difficult to make a bridge. It is difficult to make a bridge that will actually secure value reliably to the tune of billions of dollars. And that's what we're doing. The architecture that all of this will result in is this more advanced architecture, well, where you're going to have applications in Web3 built on multiple chains using multiple Oracle networks composed into one application, right? If you think about Web2 applications, you don't know, like, do you know what cloud Uber runs on? Do you know what services or what cloud Netflix uses? No, you don't. You also don't super duper care, right? You just care that you get your show and you get your ride and you get your stuff delivered. That's all you care, right? Great. That's where everything's going. So where everything's going is I'm going to build my application in the best environment for what the environment needs to do for me, and then I'm going to need all these services to connect it all up and do all this other computation that environment can't do for me, and that's it. And that's just going to be how the more advanced things are built. So this is the architecture we want. We don't want everybody going bananas over any one specific thing. We just want really reliable, really great Web3 applications And then the hundreds of trillions of dollars that will be reformatted into this reliable state will make everything happening now look like, like the very, very early days of something pretty amazing. So this architecture is the future of what we all want to arrive at. This architecture results in a hyper-connected world where multiple applications can use each other as services. There's multiple blockchains being used to make one application. There's multiple app chains being used even to make one application. And there's multiple Oracle networks as separate Web3 services being used to make one application. This is where the world's going. So this is the world that we're driving forward. It's a world of more advanced Web3 applications that can do much more, that can be highly reliable, and that can capture a greater amount of the world's value. Our role in this, and our role as the Chainlink community, is to continue to build extensions of the protocol, extensions of Chainlink, that allow more and more of these services to become useful. One good example is proof of reserves. Proof of reserves is a simple but very powerful addition to what Chainlink does, where it can prove the state of assets. So if you've heard of stable coins or commodity coins or real-world asset coins, those coins are usually connected to something off-chain. And in the spirit of cryptographic truth, you probably want to know what the state of that thing off-chain is, right? Or you also want to know what the state of the thing on the other chain is, which, once again, is just information. So proof of reserves can prove what's going on with the stuff, basically, right? The assets that, if they're not there, cause these massive solvency crises, right? So it's a really great system that if you're building a stable coin, if you're building a commodity coin, if you're building any kind of real-world asset coin, we have a lot of great work we've done in it, and I invite you to go to this session and learn more about it. It's going to definitely improve everyone's ability to rely on real-world assets and cross-chain tokens, and it's going to inject more cryptographic truth into all of these systems, allowing them to provide more value and capture more value into our industry. That's what we're all doing. We're building systems and infrastructure that are reinventing the world by being useful and capturing more value into our industry. Another system that we're continuing to create greater and greater progress and versions of is verifiable randomness. As I said earlier, verifiable randomness has become the industry standard within blockchain gaming, NFT generation, and various other sectors. The interesting thing about the verifiable randomness function is we actually now have Web 2 systems that want to use this source of randomness because it is so reliable that they cannot generate or they cannot find a source of randomness that is as reliable as the verifiable randomness that we're able to generate in this decentralized way. So it's not even just about Web 3 systems coming to life. It's actually the ability for Web 2 systems to become trust minimized to whatever degree that they deem necessary to attract more users. And in my mind, a trust minimized Web 2 system at a certain point crosses the threshold to become a Web 3 application. If you'd like to learn more about how randomness is evolving, if it's useful to your application, if it's useful from a security point of view, or random numbers for gaming or fraud proofing something point of view, we have great sessions here at the conference where you can learn more. We've made a lot of progress, and I think it's a service that's going to really define how randomness is generated to create security. Another great extension to the protocol is Chainlink automation. Chainlink automation is really extending the compute capabilities of the protocol. And this is quite necessary because I don't know if you know this, but smart contracts don't have the ability to know what time it is. So automation is kind of a critical factor, even though they're called smart contracts. They do a lot of great things, and they store state, and they make that state transparent, and they make that state private key controlled. That's awesome. It's super duper cool. But the problem is they don't do a lot of other computation that we need in order to build those more advanced applications. So this is why there's a huge amount of users now using Chainlink automation to do certain basic things like tell the application what time it is, but also to do more advanced computations that the developer either can't do or doesn't want to do on chain for cost or privacy reasons. If you're a developer building more advanced Web3 applications, I encourage you to go to the talk about this. We're making great strides and adding more and more features to allow you to build more and more advanced Web3 applications to change the face of our industry. We're also continuing to improve the core protocol. The core protocol at the center of Chainlink is really about consensus. This core protocol has to do with something called off-chain reporting, the OCR mechanism. The OCR mechanism is something we're continuing to improve, from a 1.0 version, which created 90% gain in efficiency of networks, to now the 2.0 version, and then subsequent versions. This is really about consensus and how Chainlink works at its core. If you're interested in the lower level details of Chainlink and how that's evolving, I invite you to come to this talk where we've made a lot of progress and have a lot of thoughtful points of view on how consensus in Oracle networks should evolve and is evolving already. Another key part of the protocol that we're expanding at the core level is CCIP. CCIP is the cross-chain interoperability protocol. It seeks to do what TCP/IP did for the internet by connecting many disparate networks into basically a single network through the ability to communicate. CCIP is about communication. It's fundamentally a messaging system and a messaging protocol to send communications and information across different chain environments. And one piece of information is tokens. But if you actually build a messaging system, you can do much more than tokens. You can do cool things like tell the other thing what to do with the tokens at the same time when you send the tokens. It's a very useful feature. And then there's more and more great capabilities that come from simply allowing things to communicate. So this is a core communications protocol which seeks to do the same thing for blockchains that TCP/IP did for the internet, basically creating that critical connectivity where computation ends up in the place where it's served best. If you'd like to learn more about this, I invite you to come to the talks on the topic. It's something we've made a lot of progress on and something that we're taking our time with to make sure we get it right. Our goal, once again, is to create a secure system that can handle billions, tens of billions, and eventually hundreds of billions of dollars in value flowing through it at any one time. It isn't just to ship a bridge and hope for the best. Other people can do that. We're not going to do that. We're going to take our time and validate it and audit it and do every other thing under the sun that we can realistically do. And we're very excited about the prospects of creating a capability for communicating between chains. We're working on this with some great folks, and if you're interested in cross-chain, I highly recommend you go to this talk and the other ones on CCIP. Another key part of the core protocol that we're looking to expand on is privacy. So it's really interesting how everybody is used to privacy, and when you take it away, they don't like that. So that's what Web3 does a lot of the time, is it just says, hey, you don't need privacy. Don't worry about it. Basically, that doesn't work. And it also doesn't work for a lot of the data that applications need. So what Deco does is it creates privacy. It allows data to remain private off-chain while proving the state of the data on-chain, and even allows some private computations. So Deco is the privacy-preserving part of the Chainlink protocol, which will actually turn Oracle networks into these smaller privacy-preserving computational environments. So if you want privacy in your application, you don't have to get it from a blockchain. You can actually get it from an Oracle network, whether it's about data or, in some cases, more advanced computations. This is a really interesting topic. It's going to go a little bit deeper into zero-knowledge proofs, and I recommend that you go to this talk. It's initially going to be looking at identity, because identity is a category of information that heavily depends on privacy. If you're interested in identity, I also highly recommend you go to this talk. Identity is pretty important for integrating the next wave of users into blockchain apps. So, if that's what you believe, you should go to this talk. One of the final large additions that we're going to be trying to make at the core level and then also turn into a service is fair sequencing. Fair sequencing is a notion of basically fraud-proofing blockchain transactions by ordering them in ways that people can't steal, which is, I know, confusing, which is why we have a talk in it that I'll show you in a minute. But basically, fair sequencing services initially will be applied to eliminating minor extractable value, at least reducing it to a very large degree through better methods. That's basically the goal. There's going to be some fascinating talks on this at the conference, specifically from Ari, our chief scientist, sometime today. I encourage you to go to the talk and hear about fair sequencing services. Fair sequencing is really at the core of the trust assumptions of many applications, and we think that if we're able to get it right in an Oracle network format, it'll be a valuable service to restore trust and faith in many of the applications that rely on, not becoming the HFT Wall Street 2.0 of the world, but becoming something better. That's what fair sequencing is really seeking to give the blockchain industry. And I think there will be a large amount of apps that find that attractive. All of these services, and there are many others that I don't have time to cover at the conference, and you should also go look at them. All of these services fundamentally create an infrastructure and an environment for the world's value to transition into the blockchain format, to be refactored into the reliable format, into the we can't screw you format, right? That's what all of this is about. It's about taking all of this value out of people's control and putting it in cryptographically guaranteed systems. The amount of value right now is hovering at about $1 trillion, which is much better when I started, when we were like in the tens of millions or something. So I'm thrilled no matter which direction this goes. But frankly, what I think is going to happen is that all of the world's value will be made reliable. If you have a reason why you wouldn't want the Web2 application to be more reliable, I really want to hear it. I'm very open to feedback, and I want people's dissenting views and opinions to make a stronger point of view of my own. But unless you can explain to me or yourself why you don't want a more reliable version of whatever you're relying on today, then assuming that we can get the costs and the usability to the same place that Web 2 is for Web 3, then this is pretty much the amount of value, all the world's value, that is going to be reformatted. Now, I know I'm just a guy in a plaid shirt, like in a room, talking about stuff. So, okay, that's cool. I'm so bad at predicting what will cause that, but okay. I had no idea that would happen. Okay, in any case, there are a number of, was it the shirt? Or it was the room? Which of those factors? I'm like you. Okay, great. That actually makes sense. Thank you. You are also guys in shirts and rooms. That's true. That's a fair point. We are very similar in this way. So, in many other ways, I'm sure. But, sorry. Just to get back to the point. So the point really is that I'm not the only person saying this. There's independent sources with a lot of people doing research, such as the World Economic Forum, Boston Consulting Group, and many other consultancies that have come to conclusions such as this one. In their worldview, just in the capital markets alone, so that isn't including gaming, insurance, advertising, global trade, or any other industry you could think of that's in a digital form today, just in capital markets alone, there's $867 trillion worth of value that is set to be disrupted and that can be reformatted into the Web3 format. If we look at what this means for the Web3 industry, we really just have to consider what portion of that value will be turned into Web3 revenue, right? So this isn't even the amount of value that'll be secured. We're basically saying that all 867 trillion, we're assuming that 867 trillion just from the capital markets industry will be disrupted or reformatted or reinvented or revolutionized or whatever word we want to use into this Web3 format. And that's already well underway through the custody solutions, the banks, and everybody saying, yeah, I want to move tokens around. So what percentage of that then flows to applications? So if we take a conservative estimate and we look at the 1 to 2% that other technology makes, you basically get to 9 trillion to 17 trillion in app revenue, Web3 app revenue during the course of this disruption, just from capital markets alone. Then the question for us that's more relevant to our body of work is what portion of that flows into infrastructure? If you look at the comparables for that, you'll find that the range is around 3%, and that leads to 260 billion to 520 billion in value flowing to paying for infrastructure. This is well within the range of what people pay for infrastructure generally. This is the growth projection for cloud computing in public cloud. So this isn't even all infrastructure. This is just cloud revenue that is set to grow to over $2 trillion in a number of years. So all we're really saying, if we assume these conversion rates for revenue and for infrastructure, is that a small portion of that blue-purple bar over there will end up being paid for creating trust-minimized infrastructure and apps. And that portion is relatively small. A portion of that value will then flow to decentralized Oracle networks as a key piece of infrastructure. We're estimating that conservatively in the 33% range. Could be more, could be less, but that's what we're estimating at the moment, creating a range of $86 billion to $171 billion worth of value flowing into decentralized Oracle networks generally. If you look at where Chainlink is today, Chainlink is at over 60% of all Oracle network computations for decentralized apps. And on certain verticals, it's at 70 to over 90%. So our goal with Chainlink is to make the security standard that everybody uses to do these Oracle network computations. And I'm very, very happy and proud and thankful to be able to say that we've already achieved that to the tune of what defines a standard at over 60%. And this number fluctuates, between over 50% and sometimes over 70%. And this is just for the market in general. This is also borne out by the amount of value that's transacted by Chainlink enabling it. This is a metric that we're introducing here at the conference called Transaction Value Enabled. Transaction Value Enabled basically measures how much value an infrastructure is responsible for helping transact. In the month of August of this year alone, over $512 billion worth of value was enabled by Chainlink Oracle systems, which already puts Oracle network infrastructure well on the path to securing large amounts of value and having a very real economy. So far, cumulatively, there is over $6 trillion worth of transactional value that Chainlink has enabled. And we are on track to cross $7 trillion this year, and very likely also to go past $8 trillion this year in transaction value enabled. This brings us to a kind of tipping point for the Chainlink system and the Chainlink economy, because once there's this much transactional value in a system, there is a need to basically create an economic framework to allow that value to flow into the system, to allow it to securely scale. This is why I'm very proud to announce here at the conference that we're going to be launching Economics 2.0. Economics 2.0 for Chainlink is a way for it to scale its expansion and its security across multiple chains, across multiple services to thousands and thousands of more dApps. It's composed of three primary aspects at the beginning, namely the ability to capture revenue, the ability to reduce costs, and staking. Okay, that one I could foresee that one. That one makes sense. Cool. Thank you. Thank you for your excitement and support. I appreciate it. Yeah. All of this is based on value flowing into our industry. And instead of arguing about who's right and who's wrong, I think we should just all get together and make our industry really, really critical to how the world works. And that's going to result in a lot of value flowing into these trust-minimized Web3 applications. Our goal is to provide all those services. And basically, it's very simple. The Chainlink network now needs to capture revenue and provide more and more services in an increasingly secure state. And there need to be protocol improvements and programs built around accelerating this capture of revenue, accelerating the creation of more services, accelerating the expansion of Chainlink to more chains in a secure manner. And this will lead to that cryptographically guaranteed society we just discussed, which is really what we're all going towards, in my opinion. The first part of the Chainlink Economics 2.0 system that we'll be talking about and also announcing here at the conference is something called Chainlink Build. Chainlink Build, I just realized this, but Chainlink Build builds on a long history of us helping enable some of the world's top DeFi protocols. So protocols like Aave were able to launch with Chainlink. Synthetics was able to grow to new heights. Trader Joe on another chain called Avalanche was also able to launch. There's a huge list of DeFi applications and other applications that are able to launch because they get access to high-quality Chainlink services, tech support, and various other technical resources. Chainlink Build is made to allow these early-stage teams, these kind of pre-revenue to mid-stage teams, to grow and get access to the best Chainlink services by allocating a significant portion of their total token supply to paying for the highest quality of Chainlink services. So what this is meant to do is that regardless of where the market is, it could be up, could be down, could be in the middle, we fundamentally believe in Web3, and we believe in Web3 applications and DeFi and all of these systems, and our goal is to enable all of these developers to build the next generation of systems. And in pursuit of this goal, we're making it easier and easier for different groups at different stages of their development to pay. So the rates that we've been seeing for the build program so far are somewhere in the 3 to 5% range of the total token supply of folks that are in the build program and going on to use these Chainlink services. So the build program is there to enable the growth of the next generation of DeFi and other apps by allowing them to pay in a resource they abundantly have, namely their total token supply. Larger protocols will be participating in revenue sharing. Revenue sharing is just the Chainlink network being paid a portion of the revenue in those larger protocols for the security it provides. And this works well because as the security demands of the protocol scale, their revenue scales, and therefore the fees paid to the Chainlink network scales in a way that supports them and supports their security. This is the revenue capture side of Economics 2.0, which is being announced here and is just coming out in its early versions. Chainlink Scale is about cost reduction. So the Chainlink Scale program also builds on a great history of Oracle networks coming into various blockchain environments and creating a great kind of environment, basically, a great ecosystem for developers to build applications. There's a long history of when an Oracle network goes into and becomes live on a blockchain, that is when a certain type of application can be built. And once again, this is not just some idea I have. This is something proven out by facts and data, where the chains that Chainlink networks launch on tend to rapidly increase their TVL, rapidly increase their developer activity, rapidly increase the amount of applications they build, which goes to the sentiment that I mentioned before, where our goal is to generate more and more great applications to reinvent our industry. Blockchains value this, and because they value it, many of them are becoming more and more inclined and gracious enough to enable more and more Oracle networks to go live on their system. The way they're doing this is they're basically reducing the on-chain costs of Oracles to near zero for providing those services. So basically, the Chainlink Scale program makes it so that chains can reduce the cost of providing an Oracle network down by anywhere from 50% to 99% plus, making the providing of Oracle networks very, very low cost. That'll massively increase the amount of Oracle networks and help the Chainlink network scale without having to rub up against the high costs of on-chain fees. And this will increase the amount of data and services available on those chains, which has a very clear correlation to increasing the amount of apps built on those chains. And that has a clear correlation with increasing the amount of value that our industry provides, which also has a pretty clear correlation with the amount of value that flows into our industry. So if you all add it all back together, we're kind of just building all the great applications faster. That's what we want to do, right? So the Scale program eliminates costs, so more services are available to do all of that. All of these systems together, the revenue capture side of Economics 2.0, Scale to reduce costs, and staking are the initial early experimental version of Economics 2.0. It's in the beta stages, and it's something we plan to learn a lot from. Oracle networks are unique and very different from blockchains, so we have a lot of work to do and we have a lot of learning to do. but we're at a place where these three parts of the Economics 2.0 system can effectively interact together and can give us a lot of clarity on how the Chainlink protocol should develop from here. We are also very happy to say that staking is on track to launch this December, and that folks will be able to check their early access eligibility as of this coming Monday. Early access eligibility is focused on people's activity towards the protocol, and it's something that folks can access this coming Monday to check what portion of the initial staking pool they can gain access to based on certain very clear conditions. We also expect that as staking security becomes more in demand, the staked supply will continue to increase. I want to thank everybody who's spent countless hours working on this conference. I want to thank everybody in our community who's supported us for many years, and for all the developers that we've been working with to make Chainlink a success. I'm obviously immensely grateful to our users who collaborate with us and tell us what we should build and how we should build it so we can enable them to build the future of our industry. I'm extremely grateful to all the people that are building teams in the Chainlink ecosystem. And I'm going to be seeing many of you and talking with many of you in person. And I'm really, really looking forward to hearing your ideas about how we can do even more to make the Chainlink ecosystem a place that reinvents the entire Web3 industry. We are really, though, all doing all of this for developers and for teams that are building Web3 applications. So if you're building a Web3 application, I highly encourage you to go and talk to other Chainlink Labs team members and other team members in the Chainlink community. There's a lot of booths in the other half of this conference where you can meet folks representing these various services and parts of the Chainlink protocol. We're very excited to hear your feedback about what we can be doing better, or what services or what improvements you need for the services to build that more advanced application that's going to reinvent our industry. We're very excited to be working with all of you, and I'm personally very grateful to be part of an industry that's going to be having such a large impact on the rest of the world. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and I'm excited to be speaking with many of you throughout. Thank you.